Hi, I'm George Pearson, and this is Photoshop Elements Airbrush Makeup Enhancement. If you enjoy this video, make sure that you click the like button and also subscribe to my channel. If you want to learn a lot more about Photoshop Elements, look for my complete training, and you'll find the link for that in the description. In this video, we'll be looking at how to increase the look of makeup and adjust the values, and also a little bit about how the Airbrush tool actually works inside of Photoshop Elements. Okay, let's get to it. We're going to be using the Photoshop Elements Airbrush tool to take this picture, relatively straightforward, and then modify it over to this. Notice there's two things. We're going to be adjusting the values a little bit for the overall picture, which it needs, and also we're going to be enhancing the makeup on the eyes and the lips. Pretty straightforward stuff, but it's good information to understand how to do when you're doing photo retouching. Now, before you get to this stage, I would assume you've already gone in and taken care of any other editing problems that may exist on your portrait before you begin playing around with things like the makeup. But first, before we do that, let's take a look at and see exactly how the Photoshop Elements Airbrush tool works. It's a little bit confusing, so let's see how that works. Let's start with a new file. So File, New, and Blank File. I'll just make this one the default Photoshop Elements size, 6x4 at 300 pixels resolution. Anything you want on this, this is just a quick demo to show you how the Airbrush tool works. I'm just going to dock this in place. There we are. Okay, if we go over here to the Paintbrush tool, and I'm going to choose a more interesting color here, kind of a medium blue, should be fine. There we are. So with the Paintbrush tool, you have several options in here. On the left-hand side, you have Brush, and you have the Impressionist brush, and down here you have the Color Replacement tool. We'll look at the regular brush. To the right of that, you have two options for that. You have Brush Mode, and you have Airbrush Mode. To see the effects work, I'll do a couple of settings in here. First, let's get our size so we can see the brush. Yeah, maybe about 150 or so, 100, 150. I'll just type in 150. That looks good. I have it set at a soft brush in here, and you need the opacity set down about 50%. You can choose anything you want, 25, 75, anywhere in there, but 50% is a good starting point on this. Now this has to be down from 100% for this to work. On the brush settings, I have my fade set to 43. This just kind of fades out the line as you pull it across the page. Not critical, but it helps the overall effect. Okay, now we have those settings. So a soft brush, size at 150 just so you can see the brush on the page. Opacity halfway up, 50%. And our brush settings, I have the fade set at 43. Let's look first at the brush mode here. Now if I pull a line straight across, there's the brush. If I pull kind of fast, it kind of begins to fade out on the right hand side. That is that fade setting right there. It just fades out your brush stroke. Now if I click and hold, notice that nothing happens. If I then pull it across and then I stop, but I'm still holding the button down, nothing happens. So I can take my time in painting a line like this, and it stays a nice consistent thickness. Let's now switch over here to the airbrush mode. I just pull a line straight across. There you go. But you can already see a little difference. Notice it's a bit larger at the end here. Let me show you what's happening with the airbrush mode. If I click and hold, notice how the dot grows. So if I click and then stop for a second, and then stop for a second, and stop for a second, notice the fade out is going on as well. So that's what the airbrush does. The paint keeps on flowing even if you're not moving the brush. Now what that gets is a couple of things. First, you get a variable size on your paint stroke. Let me just clean this out and we'll start from scratch. I'll just do a new layer here and we'll fill this with white so it's nice and clean. There we go. And back to our blue again and back to the brushes. So it allows you a bit more control and a bit more flexibility. If you paint quickly, you're going to be getting a thin line. If you paint more slowly, you'll be getting more paint in there. And then if you stop and start, you get these kind of dots happening. So it allows you a bit more natural stroke, more natural effect when you're painting. And it gives you a little bit of variation in there. And that's real nice if you're doing something like retouching on a portrait, because you don't want to have things perfectly clean, perfectly exact. Whenever you have that, it begins looking fake. So having a bit more variation in here really helps out on that airbrushing effect. So that's what the Airbrush tool does. The main thing really is right here. You click and hold, and the paint keeps on flowing for a moment while the brush isn't moving. So you can get different amounts. You just kind of tap and get more paint as you come in. Let's go back here to the brush tool, and I'll just do that. Notice it gets darker as I'm clicking. I get that effect, but if I click and hold, it doesn't do anything. I'm still holding down the mouse button. It's not doing anything. And let's go over here to the airbrush again. Same thing, click and hold. And you can see how the paint keeps on flowing even though the brush isn't moving. And that's the difference between the paintbrush and the airbrush, is that additional flow that happens. And again, it adds a nice bit of variation in there. Okay, that's how the airbrush works. And you know, it's not always appropriate, but sometimes it helps. And the nice thing is, again, that it adds a bit of variability, a bit of variation into your work. Okay, let's take a look now at how we can use this to come here and just kind of increase the makeup quality on this. Now, depending upon how you work, you know, either tool will work fine, the regular brush or the airbrush. I prefer the airbrush just because it gives a bit more of a variability when you're working and makes things look a bit more naturalistic. Alright, I'm just going to open up my existing or my original image over here, File, and we have the model shot right there. And here it is. I have floating windows enabled. It doesn't matter for this particular video. Let's close down my example. There we are. So here's the original, and we don't care about what's happening down below here. It's just a black sweater. Nothing exciting, so I'm going to zoom in on just the face here. Let's go back one touch. The first thing I want to do is just to adjust the values in here on the image. Now, whenever I do this kind of a change or an adjustment on a picture, if I'm doing the adjustment right on the layer, I always make a copy of the background layer. Just go ahead and we'll copy it up here, new layer button, and hide the original. And the reason for that is that I'm making changes right to this image, and I want to have the original saved in the file. Just in case I mess up, I can always go back to my original down here. So it's a good safety habit to be in. So we're working on the background copy. So let's adjust our levels first. And the reason I'm doing the levels adjustment here right on the image is that I don't want to have any adjustment layers in between, which may cause me problems when I come in to put in my enhanced makeup effects. Okay, so go up here to Enhance, come down to Adjust Lighting and Levels, my personal favorite. All this really needs is boosting of the basic values. So let's just bring our lights up a bit, adds a bit more contrast on the light side, and bring the darks up a bit, adds a bit more contrast on the dark side. So we're putting in some contrast here, which it needs, and that looks pretty good. And then let's adjust the tones. Just pull those just a little ways to the right, just a bit, and that adds some value back in. Basically, the image was taken with too hot of a light. It was too bright, and it was washing out the image a little bit. So this takes care of that washed out effect, just increasing the contrast a little bit and darkening down the whole picture just a touch, just to bring our values back into a good range again. And choose OK. So let's just see how that looks. There's the original kind of washed out, and there is the cleaned up one. Most images you'll find can benefit from a little bit of increased contrast, and there we are. Okay, that's our beginning. Now, I'm going to be doing the eyes separately, one eye, two eye, and then we'll do the mouth as a third layer. Now, all of these will be layers above this layer, so that we can then blend those layers into this layer. And blending is the very important part about this. So let's make a new layer here above that. I'm going to call this one left. Actually, it's her right eye, but it's the eye on the left. So I'll call it left from our point of view here. And we'll have one above that for right and above that one for the mouth. Now, we're working on the left side of the picture, so I'll zoom in. And you can see she already has some makeup here. And that's important for this technique. She needs to already have something in here. We're simply enhancing what she already has. Now, with this trick, you want to enhance this area up in here, but you don't want to touch the lid down here or anything else. So we need to mask out this stuff so we're not going to be accidentally hitting that, and we're just working up in here. So let's put a layer mask on this layer. Now the easy way to do that is to just grab the lasso tool or the polygonal lasso tool. I have mine set here at new. I'll set my feathering at 1 pixel just to kind of soften things up a little bit. And there it is, polygonal lasso tool. And I'll start right down here. Notice that there's kind of a bit of a curve right here. See the bone kind of curves in right in there and then up over the top. That's what you want to get. So I'm going to start right here in the corner, and we'll finish off that little bit at the end. Just work right up around the eyelid here, right on that crease, and take your time with this tool. If you click too quickly, it will collapse the selection down and you'll have to start over again. Make sure you just take your time around and come down right down to the corner of the eye, and then just take it out and around the eyebrow up here, and then bring it right in, right where that curve would be at that bottom area. This gives us a selection of just this section so that we can work right inside here and not any place else. Now to make this easy, so that we can get back to this if we change layers and not have to worry about remaking this selection or saving our selection or anything, let's just convert this to a layer mask. So once the selection is made, just click on the layer mask button. There's a layer mask with just that selection shown. It also gets rid of those lines so those lines aren't bothering us, that selection outline. Okay, now make sure you're still on the image side over here. When you made the layer mask, you would have switched over to layer mask side. So make sure you're back over here on the image side of that layer. Click on the foreground color. That brings up the color picker. Ignore that. You just want the eyedropper. You can see it right there. Come in and find a nice value in here for the existing makeup color. And I'll usually click around just a few times so I kind of see where the color is. That's pretty good right in there. So there's our basic makeup color. I may go a little bit brighter, just a little bit in here, not much, maybe just a little more saturated on the right hand side, just up just a touch from the spot that we clicked on, and choose OK. So there's our color. Let's now go to the paintbrush, sitting on the Airbrush tool, and want to bring the brush size down. I want it about the same size as that area I'm painting into right there. You can see it right there. Now we're going to be painting further out than we need, and we'll come back and clean that up with the eraser tool. We're also going to be blending this in using a blending mode, but let's just start this way. Now the opacity is at 50%. I'm going to bring this down to about 25%. This just slows down how fast the paint flows on. And then I'm just going to come in here and just kind of airbrush in, just like I'm using an actual airbrush. Now it looks awful right now. That's fine, because it's just coming on as flat color on top of her eyes. So you need to blend this in now to the layer underneath. Come down and change this to soft light, and that blends it in, and you now see the accentuation of that color in there. At this point you can continue on, and once you've gone through one pass, you may want to come back and darken your color down a little bit. Now I want to use the same colors for the other eye over here. So we'll come back to this in just a bit and add a bit more of a darker tone in here in the middle area right in there. We'll do that as a second pass. So there's our first pass on the eye. You can see already how much more accentuated that eye color is. Now we've already brightened that up and added in more eye color. If you go too far on this, all you have to do is switch over to the eraser tool and then just come back in and clean up your edges a little bit with the eraser tool, just like that. Alright, let's do the other eye now. First pass, since we're using that same color. So a new layer up here, same thing as before. Go to the Polygonal Lasso tool, start from the outer corner, work your way up and around the lid in here. Again, just take your time on this. Don't be in any hurry. And bring it around to the corner of the eye, and then out and around the eyebrow. We don't need any of that. Make your selection. Hit the layer mask button. Gives you a layer mask. For that, we can now go back to our paintbrush and do the exact same thing on this side. Now again, if we come in and just make sure on the image side, there we are. That's what I want. So if I just paint in, it comes in flat, as you can see. So to fix that, let's change this back to soft light, and there's the nice accentuation on that color right in there. Okay, that's the first pass on this. Let's now go back to our color, and staying in the same color range, I'm going to come down a bit of a darker color in here. Let's go back to our first eye, and then just right in here, I'm going to come a little bit darker on this, just a bit more color on the outside. And then to our other side over here, and a bit more color on the outside over here. Now, I'm not a pro at doing makeup on women. If you really want to know how makeup should be applied, ask a woman. I don't apply makeup to myself. I don't have a whole lot of experience with that. But this is the basic concept, kind of a lighter color, then you accentuate with a darker color in there. Okay, let's see how this looks. To make this easy to see, I'm going to take our background layer. Let's bring it up here, make a new layer on that, hide that again. Drag the background above everything else. So now here's our original, and there it is with the accentuated makeup color. So we're not really adding in new color or changing color, we're just accentuating what's already there and putting in more of it and giving it more color. Okay, there is your eyes. Let's now do the mouth. So I'll go back to our move tool. Let's scroll down here. There it is with and without. It already is better, of course, because we've enriched the values in here previously. But let's make this even more vibrant. Same thing as before. Make a new layer above your image layer. There we are. Grab the Polygonal Lasso tool and make a careful selection around the lips. Now the lips are soft on the edge, so you may or may not want to soften up the edge of your layer mask. It depends on how it turns out. Sometimes you'll need to do that, sometimes you don't need to do that. I'll show you the technique, but again, it isn't always necessary. It's kind of a judgment call on that. We'll see how this looks. And again, just take your time and work around, make a nice clean selection. And back up to our starting position up here. There we are. Now I need to take care of the teeth, need to hide the teeth, so let's switch this tool over to subtract, and we'll come in and carefully subtract the teeth out of that selection. So we have just the lips selected and nothing else. Okay, just straight across. There we go. So there's the selection, just the lips. Let's convert that to a layer mask. So hit the layer mask button. There we are. Now, just like before, make sure you're on the image side. There it is. Grab the eyedropper tool or click on the foreground color. Gives you the eyedropper. Come in here and grab kind of a medium value. You want to see where the color isn't into shadow and it's not into a highlight. You just want to find a nice medium value. That's the actual color of the lipstick in there. And you may want to go just a little bit more saturated, which is to the right on that. Not too much, it's a very, very small amount. Back to our brush. We still have our airbrush setting, which makes it just a little bit softer on our edges, gives a bit more flexibility on that, and come in and just paint right over the lips. Now again, this is coming in solid paint, so we need to blend this back into the lips, and that's the blend mode up here, and use the soft light blend mode. Blends that back into the lips, and there we go. Now if I bring the original back, there it is, and there is our fix on that. Really accentuates the coloration of the lips. Now, this looks good. The edges look good on this right there. I don't have any problem with those edges. But in case the edges come out too hard, the way you fix that is to go to your layer mask over here, up to Filter and Blur and Gaussian Blur. And you can see right here, if I zoom in a little bit, you can blur the edge of that layer mask. Just like that. And that blurring effect will help to get rid of any hard edge that you may have on that layer mask. We don't need that, but just in case, that's how that's done. Okay, let's go ahead and look at this again. I'm just going to back out a bit. One more time. There we go. That's pretty good. So there is our enhanced makeup effect. There it is after we have adjusted our values and makeup, and there's the original picture right there. So before and after, and I think we've really improved the look of this picture. Again, fairly straightforward, fairly easy, and you don't have to use the Airbrush tool on this one, but using the Airbrush tool makes it just a little bit more variation as you're doing this, makes it look a little bit more natural, and I tend to like it for that. So there we are. That's two things in one, two lessons in one. First, what the Airbrush tool is all about, and second, how you can come in and accentuate the makeup on a portrait. Thank you for watching my video. I hope you found it useful. If you like this video, click on the like button below to let others know. You can click the subscribe button so you don't miss any of my videos in the future. I'm frequently uploading new training videos. Don't forget to check out my website at howtogurus.com.